And we're back.
We're after we awkwardly paused for about 6 seconds in real life, and it's been a week for you. We are now traveling close to the speed of light, and our sense of time is now detached from your reality to the listener. So we're back with Matt. You're the man. First off, thank you for everything that you gave us for last week's episode, which just happened a couple minutes ago in our time.
Amazing.
It's amazing. This is very, I don't know, a lot of like J.J. Abrams
This is so meta.
shit going on right
incredible.
now. But I want to, I'm fascinated not just with the constant yearning for learning, which I did not intend to rhyme. That sounds really stupid. I'm so sorry. The yearning for the learning. I'm obviously that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I really love the fact that you were saying in the previous episode how you and Sam Moses, the mastering engineer that you work with a lot, you both kind of deep dove into understanding how these streaming platforms affect the audio through their normalization algorithms. And it was something that you guys have been working on together and like trying to understand this together. And I feel like that's something that is kind of rare in my experience in the industry. And I mean, I like building teams all the time, and that's something that I do quite a bit, but finding other people that are doing other services than what you do or other parts of the process of what you do, but still finding like that common goal that you both want to try to, crack the same nut. That I don't think that happens very often. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about, what that process actually looks like for you and Sam. Like, how do you guys, I'm assuming it just happens naturally as far as what you both get psyched about, but how do you actually learn from each other and teach each other the things that you're figuring out?
Yeah, well, in the case of this record that I've been referencing, a lot of it was
which is a hardcore record, because this is a new episode. So I was going to say, could you?
Yes. Sorry, it was a hardcore record that I don't know when this is going to come out, but might be out by the time this comes out. We'll find out. But in that case, it was honestly really spearheaded by the producer. The producer, well, the process. Here's how it happened. The record came about. Or came onto my, radar because I'd worked with this producer on a previous project. He had co-produced the Boys Like Girls record that I'd worked on, and so he was producing this other record, and the band had worked with a number of different mix engineers in the past, and so there were 4 mix engineers that they were interested in trying out, me being one of them, and so it was basically a shootout situation. And in that situation, I ran into what I was talking about in the previous episode, where I'm like, I can't get this song to sound like I want it to sound. And the second that I dropped the amount of compression or limiting on the mix bus by a couple dB, I all of a sudden found the space to create. And ultimately, I turned in a mix that was quieter than the ref in the shootout. And, I felt like a little bit of a risk to some extent, but, I've got a good relationship with the producer. So I had that conversation. I said, hey, and I did exactly what you talked about in the previous episode. I'm like, when I had that moment, aha moment where I was like, this is what's missing in this song, is room for these things to punch through. I sent him his ref. I was like, can you jump on a stream? I want to show you something. This is blowing my mind. And then we listen to his ref, then I put mine on, and I'm like, mine is quieter than yours, but listen to what's going on here. And he was like, oh, holy crap, this is crazy. And that sort of planted the seed for what later became that learning process of deep diving into the implications of loudness, not only on streaming, but just in the song and how it comes across and how it affects the mix. And so that sort of planted the seed of obsession for us. And so Danon, the producer, once we got into mastering, we just kind of, actually we did a mastering shootout too. And it was very interesting, but Sam ended up getting the record. And His masters were amazing. But that planted the seed for all of us to kind of dive into that. So it was really just a perfect storm of obsession, because the two of us, Dana and I, got obsessed on the topic of loudness, not even considering Spotify at that point. And then when we brought Sam in as mastering engineer, it kind of met his years of obsession on the topic, and he was like, let's freaking do this. And so we had the timeline on the record where we had a little space to just kind of some room to experiment and to run. And so, I mean, it turned into the most absurdly long group text on the face of the earth. And that was really the learning process for, like, the whole process of learning together was just asking questions and a willingness on Sam's part to run infinite passes on the master. And I'm going to say this, I would never expect that from in a typical situation. It was just, we were all bought into this idea of taking it as far as we could, taking the sonics as far as we could. And so it kind of, just met a willingness on all parties and an interest on all parties to just delve into it. And so honestly, it was a passion project for us this like learning process was not so much like, oh, it's on my calendar today to learn about loudness. It was just, we got fascinated and gave room for that fascination to kind of, blossom, so to speak. And so, just room to ask questions and room to, just try things. And I think that's a lot of the learning is just maintaining kind of a fascination and being willing to ask questions and being willing to be proven wrong or be proven right, or being willing to ask a question that's met with another question. And so, I mean, it honestly happened very organically. It was just baked into the goals of the record. And it was just, I don't even know. That was like, just kind of the origin story on that obsession. But
it's like you guys volunteered to do like a doctoral thesis on loudness and how it relates to streaming platforms. Out of sheer
we
desire.
Volunteered for a clinical trial. Out of sheer desire.
I imagine, like, when you talk about this absurdly long, like, group text, I just imagine that meme where the woman's sitting at the edge of the bed saying, he's probably thinking about other girls, and then it's the guy laying over, and he's like, I wonder if I bring down 2K by half a dB, then I could actually get 0.4 extra lufs. That's the kind of life that I imagine.
That was basically it.
Okay,
that sums up audio engineers
that's
like
pretty
in a
much
nutshell. Yeah.
So us being like so psyched about 0.5 dB of extra peak on a master, like, yeah.
Well, it's
free punch.
This is like the thing I keep saying. I think I said this in the last interview we did. Just everybody who is interested in audio engineering, they end up becoming like lifetime learners. They just are always interested in learning and getting better because they're just so fascinated by the craft,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like, I would say that's one of the greatest joys of doing what I do, is being able to learn, but not just learn, but learn alongside others. I think, some of my best friends, the people that I text most, it's a group text of other mix engineers that I just look up to and respect, and we all have a mutual admiration for each other. And so we're always just sharing the things that we're learning today. And, this guy just got a bunch of hardware and we're doing shootouts of hardware versus software and that eternal question. And, it's just being able to learn alongside others. Just being able to learn on your own is important. And it's such a huge part of growing in the craft, but being able to learn with others, it's like even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get fresh ideas.
Yeah. Get fresh ideas. And also like when somebody has an aha moment, even if you're listening to the same thing, trying the same thing, if their unique set of experiences just makes it click for them before it clicks for you, they're able to figure out like, oh, how can I explain this to Matt in a way that will make sense to him?
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah, it's almost like you have, I don't know, like knowledge scouts out also along with you, like, and it's whoever stumbles upon that that understanding first shares it with the rest of the group.
Yeah, it's the best.
Have you guys had other like unified learning experiences, like whether it's like you and Sam or you and the guys in the group?
Oh, I mean, it's just a matter of remembering at this point. I mean, yeah, the answer is yes. I'm just trying to think of specific examples. I mean, we went down like the path of shooting out EQ plugins and stuff like that, because there was a moment there where everyone was like, "Is Kirchhoff the new Pro Q?" And and just that was fun. We did like blind tests and stuff like that, and finally realized after pulling out Plugin Doctor that they're doing the exact same thing, and they null to -80. So it's like, okay, well, I'll just keep using ProQ. But yeah, I mean, we've had so many different. I mean, right now the obsession. 2 of the guys are getting into hardware for the for probably 3rd time. After it's like, get hardware, go back in the box. Get hardware, go back in the box. And I'm like, I'm such a Debbie Downer with hardware, and like the eternal skeptic. I was, well, okay, and I'll say this: I'm not a skeptic in the value of it, in the value of like creating with it, and getting to the sound that's in your head faster, if that's what hardware does for you, or if hardware makes the process more enjoyable. But I've just been such a fan of, I grew up in a software world, so those are the tools that I use to create and make the most sense to me, and also happen to have massive workflow benefits to them. But anyway, so in this conversation, yeah, it's been a lot of fun to kind of reopen that question of, should we be using hardware in mixing? Like, what does summing do for us? And hearing the shootouts, and it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, we're always, talking about something, mix bus stuff, or how are you, compressing your vocal these days, blah, 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 all the things that you would imagine. Sometimes it's, I tried this really stupid idea and it really worked. We've been obsessed lately, 2 of us, or I think just 2 of us, me and my buddy Doug, been obsessed with, there's a K-Clip 3 is a plugin. It's a clipper. There's tape mode on it. It's just a really cool vibe. Even if you run, slap it on your mix bus, put tape mode on, don't do any clipping with it, like trim it back so it's not doing any clipping. It just does such a cool thing tonally. But that's kind of been something that came out of the group text that was like, oh yeah, this is really cool. But yeah, so we're always doing that, yes.
Is there anything that you tried to get the rest of the group on board to deep dive with you, and they were just like, nah, man, you're alone on this one? Like something that it was like too nerdy and specific?
No, I feel like they're all always down to clown, you know what I mean? I mean, I just, I'm trying to think of, I'll let you know if I can think of anything else. I mean, we're getting together next week to talk Atmos and all that stuff, so that'll be fun. We try to get together and like every now and again. And one thing that we did before, I'd moved to LA for a bit, and now I'm kind of splitting my time between LA and Nashville. Currently living in Nashville, but before I moved, we would get together and kind of the MO. I thought this was a great idea. It wasn't my idea, but the MO was we would get together. The person who's hosting it in their studio would pull up a mix that they just sent off. Like a mix one on, and each person would we'd kind of go through the session. The person who mixed it would be like, oh yeah, look at the session. The other people would ask questions like, oh, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? That sort of thing. And then what we would do is the people who didn't mix it would take turns on the mix with the goal of how would you make this 5% better? And it was such a great learning process of like learning, because we all get those mixes in that are like, or not all, not every mix is like this, but every now and again you'll get a mix in where it's like, dang, this is really good. What can I add to this? And I think always one of the most interesting questions to ask a mix engineer is, what are the things that you do on the mixes that sound amazing? to take it that extra 2, 3, 4, 5%. And that was kind of the goal around those get-togethers, and it was a lot of fun. But I think like a big thing for me is always maintaining a view of other mix engineers, not as competitors, but as like peers and as friends and as
yes,
I don't know, where it's like we're in the foxhole together on this thing, and we've got so much to learn from each other, and there's so much music out there to mix that we have, you know, the freedom and the joy of being able to celebrate each other's victories and keeping that relationship non-competitive as much as possible. I mean, you know, there's inevitably going to be the situation, if you've got mixed buds, there's going to be the situation where you're in a shootout with one of them, or they get an artist that you had been mixing for before. Like that stuff happens all the time, but you know, just learning to roll with it and be like, you know, you don't, the people that you mix for, you don't own them. You know what I mean? You have no right to their business. They can work with whoever they want to work with. Maybe they want a scene change, a different sound. But kind of just relinquishing that control of, oh, these are my clients, and having that precious mentality about the people that you work with or the people that you could work with, and relinquishing that for what I think is a much better thing, and that is a collaborative and a community type mindset to the people that you're working around. Like living and working as someone who has a competitive mindset is really lonely, and it's so much more beneficial to trade that for friends. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's been a big lesson for me in the course of this. You know, some of those lessons have to be learned the hard way. And for me, I think my journey into learning to view other mix engineers as friends and as peers begun when I lost clients to other mix engineers, and kind of, you know, grieving that in my own time, feeling insecure. And then, like, I remember that happened, I was so bummed about it, lost a mix. And then I was like looking at the credits on a big record, and I was like, oh, there are like 6 mix engineers on this record. I was like, oh yeah, like we don't own the people we work with. We don't own their work. We you know, we've all got something to bring to the table. And, you know, especially in the pop world, larger artists, like it's so common to have multiple artists on a record. So just freaking get used to it, and, you know, be thankful for the business that you have, serve those people as well as you can, and find a way to be happy and a contributor to the larger community in the way that you posture yourself as a mix engineer. So
that's great. And I fully am with you. And I've always looked at music as a social sport. Like, it's not meant to be done in isolation. And I think, you know, going back to how, you know, we spent the whole previous episode talking about Spotify a little bit, and just the fact that there are 30,000 plus, you know, songs coming out on Spotify every single day. Like, to look at your friends as, or like other mix engineers in your world as competitors is just ridiculous, especially if you kind of band together, you know, the rising tide lifts all ships, or whatever the phrase is. Like, you all get better. Like, there is enough work to go around if you realize that there's so much music, there's so much art, so many creators. And yeah, getting that weird, like, I don't know, isolation, jealousy, like it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do the artist any good, and it definitely does not do the engineer any good.
Yeah,
I would add to that, just say, like,
self-inflicted pain.
Well, we all started sort of in the digital age. Us, you know, we didn't grow up in the you know, the big studio scene where you'd, like, you know, go up the ranks and stuff, and there was actually legitimate reason to be competitive. But also, like, we were all by ourselves for so many years in our man caves, like the three of us, and women caves for the women out there. Like, we were just, you know, that's how you did it. You got fascinated with audio, and then you got a DAW, and then you went into it, right? And so to get out of that kind of cave takes a considerable amount of effort, and it is, you have to, I guess, we at some point come to realization that we're better off interacting with other people rather than viewing them as competition. And yeah, and I would say like a tangible like takeaway from this, what you've been saying, which is so awesome, like for the listeners, is like, A, get out of your cave, but like B, maybe find a mastermind group of people that that you can like that, like how can I make the mix 5% better thing is so brilliant. And like, I'm just thinking like, I've never done that. I should do that, like find people that, that you can collaborate with, and don't think of them as your competition, and just like get to work, because you could learn so much from other people. And it's like, we don't have a water cooler because most of us are working by ourselves. So digitally we can do so much.
Okay. So
absolutely.
Hear me out. I understand how, we all see the value in the collaborative nature of it, and like, seeing peers as well, I guess seeing peers as peers, not as competition. But hear me out. Mix Engineer Fight Club. You guys in?
No, I'm too skinny. I'd be dead by round 1.
Oh God.
Okay. Lightning round.
I know my strengths and weaknesses.
What other mixed engineers could you take in a fight club fight? And go. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you got me thinking.
Obviously, Serban.
Probably none of them.
I'm just joking. I'm obviously.
You know
joking.
what I found out recently? I found out that a buddy of mine told me that Serban is like the best guitarist you'll ever meet. He's like a phenomenal guitarist.
No shit.
I just think that's cool. So, lesson learned, he's literally better than me at everything.
Except for building an igloo out of acoustic panels.
Yes. Behold. Yeah,
and for getting on podcasts and sharing your knowledge
on there
with the world also.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. I'll just explain my igloo here. I recently moved into a new room, and it was like, I have to get to work. And so I had all this like pre-existing panels from other rooms. And I was like, I'm just going to build, Carl called it the igloo, because it definitely looks like an igloo, but I call it the Stonehenge. It's like my little freestanding room. I've got like 2x4s going across the top where my clouds are lying on them. And then there's going to be a long weekend sometime where I'm going to be like, all right, time to actually do the thing. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Nice. Cue the Spinal Tap reference.
Sounds decent though, so. Exactly.
Is it just me?
So funny. The tiny Stonehenge.
Oh, yes. So good.
So perfect.
I want to go back to the technical thing, but I don't know if that's okay with Carl.
Yeah. As long as you let me try to spin it into something more philosophical afterward.
Okay.
I like the challenge.
Okay, so you mentioned before we started chatting that you've made some changes to your stereo bus processing. And last time we spoke, we talked about Atmos and how you had a sort of like a minimalist sort of approach to Atmos that was working for you. Again, this was like for the audience, it was about 10 months ago. Tell us about, like how that's evolved, and is Atmos at all in play when it comes to the stereo bus?
So no, I don't really think about Atmos when I'm approach my stereo bus for the most part. Yeah, pretty much never. But I would say, well, do you want me to address my Atmos approach or my mix bus approach? I feel like mix bus approach has a little bit more of a universal
so let's do that.
Here.
Let's do that. We can skip the Atmos.
That.
People should listen to the previous episode to get more.
I'm not going
to, or not. Maybe there's updates, but whatever.
Yeah, little free tip on Atmos. Well, no, we won't do the free tip on Atmos. You'll have to pay me for that tip. Anyway, mix bus in general, like I don't really want to necessarily talk about what I've been doing on the mix bus as much as something that has been helping me in the way I think about mix bus. And I think this applies for producers as well. One thing that I think is a really interesting exercise to do is, so when we look at multiband processing, ozone, all the presets in there, whatever, the God particle is a great example. I think what I'm learning is there are, when you slap something like that on your mix bus, there are often two things primarily that happen. There's a change in your dynamics, right? So things might become a bit more dense. Things, your attack and release in your different bands is being affected. And a lot of times on that front, that can be positive, it can be negative, right? But I think if I were to guess, and this would be my answer as well, the thing that happens that I think pushes a lot of people to multiband is the tonal change, and it's like all of a sudden your song and your mix has this shape that's more pleasing. Oftentimes it's most often it is more of a smiley face curve because you got a lot of mid-range energy or whatever, and people are like, oh, all of a sudden sounds better. And I've found that I've been much happier in my mix bus approach as I've eliminated almost all multiband. And, I always joke, like, there was a time when I was like, no multiband on the mix bus. And then I was like, I'm the biggest fan of multiband ever. I had like 3 multiband. And then now I'm in like post multiband. And so maybe next month I'll have 5 multiband processors on my mix bus. But so that's not really the point.
It's like a multiband fractal.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not saying don't use multiband on your mix bus. Kind of like what we were talking about with the loudness thing. I think it's more about being intentional about what you're trying to accomplish and intentional about evaluating what a certain move is doing to your mix. And an exercise that's been really helpful for me lately is something to try out. Take your multiband, whatever's going on, and first of all, do level match. Make sure that what's happening with and without the multiband that are level matched, so you can compare those. But more importantly, EQ match what is going on. Isotope in the ozone thing has EQ match, and you can kind of take a picture of a portion without, before the plugin, and a picture of it without, and you can apply one to the other. So you can say, I want, ozone to apply this curve that's happening from this multiband processor or plugin or whatever. I want to apply that on my mix bus without that, so apply that curve and do that exercise and listen to see if what you're really chasing after is a tonal change, or are you chasing after the multiband, like the compression side of things. If it's the compression side of things, and great, use it skillfully, know what you're doing. But I find that if you, that a lot of times people are just chasing after the tonal side of things. So the big shift for me lately has been when I want something to happen tonally in a mix, to just reach for an EQ. You know what I mean? Like, get the shape of the mix right, get it to feel exciting. It's fine. Do it on your mix bus. I wouldn't do a lot of corrective stuff on your mix bus with EQ. That kind of stuff's done better on a track level, in my opinion. But just be intentional about that, because the thing about multiband processing is there's just a lot going on under the hood. And a lot of times I find that with multiband stuff, it's really easy to get a mix to 85%, but then you're just pressing against this invisible ceiling that's pushing back at you. You're like, I want more low end, so you boost low end. Now your multiband compressor is compressing more low end. You know what I mean? And so if you can simplify your approach a little bit, let your compression be your compression, let your tonal moves be EQ or saturation or whatever. That you end up being in a situation where you can more easily accomplish the sound that you've got in your head without feeling like you're fighting your mix bus. So that's been a huge revelation for me, and has pretty much single-handedly eliminated most multiband use on my mix bus. But there are times where it can be amazing, and so I'm not crapping on multiband. I'm just saying separate the tonal from the dynamic. It can be very, very helpful. So That's my little spiel on multiband. Come back next week when I disagree with myself.
Well, I love that. I think you have to try things out. And like you said, even like just like, experiment and see what it does.
Mhm.
And so like putzing around with this stuff can open your mind to new things. But it's like when you get into the business, you got to make these intentional decisions. And so it's like, it's good to play. And then it's good also to be intentional and also to like A/B and be judicious about it,
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too about your love-hate relationship with multiband compression, in a way, it's very similar to your friends in your text chat that have that same relationship with hardware. And they're using hardware, then they're in the box, using hardware in the box. And I think what we kind of forget about ourselves is that when we go back and forth, it's not just like, we're flip-flopping or we changed our mind. It's more like, we've learned more things. Our perspectives change. The way we approach music and art and the science of it has shifted. And now that I have this, updated, August 2024 approach to it and understanding of how this shit works, now I actually think that's getting in the way. That was the wrong move. Or, now that, in October, you've learned a couple more things and it's like, actually now I can use multiband to do something because I'm using it from a different problem solving angle than before. I just think it's interesting that we, it's not that the software necessarily changes or the hardware changes or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, we start looking at it from a different perspective than we did in the past.
For sure.
So it's totally normal to kind of go back and forth between using something every day and swearing it off for, the foreseeable future and then going back into it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably use it next week. I don't know.
It's like we have seasons.
But hopefully,
in life,
I like you said, I think the goal of this is just to understand the tools that you're using and actually understand them and like understand what's going on underneath the hood. I don't typically like a plugin to make decisions for me. And so, just being intentional about that.
And I think I do want to kind of like specify too the difference between understanding what the plugin's doing, like understanding how the plugin works and reading the manuals and watching all the tutorials, but also understanding, well, what is it doing to not just the sound, but to the vision of the artist? Like, is this helping to get closer to the goal of, is it making it different? Yes. Is it making it better sonically? Maybe. Is it getting it closer to the goal that the artist has in mind? And I think that's where, like knowing what the plugin does versus knowing what it does to your song is a very different thing that I feel like a lot of producers and engineers, especially in the early years, they don't take that next step. They just learn what the plugin does and they don't really figure out, maybe I don't want it to do that.
Exactly. It's a process.
Yeah.
Just put Frank's hot sauce on everything.
It's a mix bus process.
Until you realize that you don't want cayenne pepper.
Just put Frank's on it.
Whatever the hell is inside of Frank's hot sauce.
That's right. On your ice cream.
So good.
Thank you so
fun.
much.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. I was very glad. Sorry. Bringing another guest on the show.
I love it. For the video,
it's
for the viewers,
great, guys.
They'll see it.
I love talking to you. Yeah. She's a good studio dog.
Do you have a noise profile saved for her?
I don't, but I should. She doesn't make much noise.
Amazing.
I can tell. For those just listening, Matt is now hallucinating and pretending there's a dog on his lap. Just don't watch the video.
You're right. All right.
Well,
we need you to get down. All right.
Well, if we ever want to learn something,
this has been great.
Just call Matt, because this guy is always learning and he's sharing, and it's wonderful. And I'm inspired by how much you learn and share, and I learned so much today. So just thank you so much.
Well, yes, I did too. Just talking about it and hearing from you guys, it's the best.
Oh, you're the best. You're both the best. Aw. Okay, this is the part of the show where we all just look at each other lovingly and, say you reach all the best. But honestly, Matt, thank you so much. Ben, thank you so much. Can't wait to eventually do another episode with you.
Heck yeah. I'm always down. I love hanging with you guys.
All right.
Can't wait to figure out your updated multiband compression tactics.
Oh yeah. I'll have it. I'll have it ready.
Sick. We're so lucky to have you, Matt.
Bye, Ben. Bye, Matt.
All right.
All right. See you
Peace,
guys
everyone.
later. Thanks so much.